3 anos do conflito entre a Ucrânia e a Rússia. Quando é que será que a guerra vai acabar? E como a Ucrânia vai reconstruir o país? Tive a oportunidade de conversar com a delegação ucraniana sobre todos esses pontos. E principalmente sobre qual é o papel do Brasil no conflito e depois dele, na reconstrução do país. Deixe o seu like e fica aqui conosco. Sou o Cláudio Garcia, direto de Nova York, para o My News, e nos vemos logo depois da vinheta. Fazem quase 2 anos do início dos conflitos na Ucrânia. Se acredita que entre 100 a 300 mil pessoas já faleceram, dependendo da fonte, e até agora a gente não vê um fim para a guerra. Será que a guerra vai acabar cedo ou não? O mais interessante é a sociedade civil da Ucrânia não está esperando para o fim da guerra para repensar a retomada econômica do país. Nessa última semana, eu tive a oportunidade de conversar com um grupo de cidadãos ucranianos. Eles vieram ao Brasil para criar conexões culturais, econômicas, na agricultura, na área de energia verde e também na área de educação, pensando na reconstrução do país. Vamos ver como foi a entrevista. Thank you so much for being here with us today. I feel very sad about what's happening in your country, the tragic situation there. I feel sorry about that. But there are a lot of implications that we want to hear from you about what's happening in the war right now and what's coming after. So the first question I have for you is about despite the tragic situation there are a lot of things that go beyond the war. Actually, the war is beyond the country. There's definitely the battles and all things happening in the field, but there is a lot of things happening in the information space, in the security space, in the way that the narratives are spreading through the world. Just tell me a little bit about how do you perceive that? What's your mission here when you come to Brazil to talk to other people about what's going on in Ukraine?
I know one of the areas of activity at the Ukraine institution where I'm working on is the study, the perception of Ukraine abroad. For a long time, the understanding of Ukraine, that is of ourselves in the world, was often formed through the lens of Russia, unfortunately. And that's why for a long time we looked like victims of corruption, victims of some disasters such as Chernobyl. But during the time of the full-scale invasion, this perception changed. Today, we are no longer a nation of victims, but a nation of brave people. Yes, we talk a lot about the occupation of our territories. We talk about the destruction, about the losing human lives. But the stories that we can be found in Ukraine today are the stories of extraordinary, bold steps taken by ordinary Ukrainians. And these are very important stories where a person in Ukraine stands up against a great evil that is trying to kill with missiles, for example, and defends our dignity, our freedom, and right to the democratic future. The first day of full-scale invasion, many of my friends took up arms for the first time, joined the ranks of the Ukraine army, and began to defend our country. One of such cases is the case of my friend. He's a Ukrainian journalist and human rights defender, Maxim Butkevich, who was a pacifist before the full-scale war. But after that, he went to defend his home from the invaders, and now he's in Russian captivity. And for us, today is the time to open Ukraine to the world.
The history of Ukraine is so rich, it's so rich. I mean, actually, when you look to the past, the source of innovation for the region that comes from Ukraine is just impressive. Innovation, cultural innovation, businesses, a lot of areas where Ukraine was a source of innovation for the whole region over there. That's very impressive. So I have another question, and maybe it's for you, Olga. That is, I mean, the country, many parts of the country are destroyed. Destroyed because of course, all what Russia has done, to the country. And there will be a reconstruction, definitely. I mean, the country needs to reconstruct, and that is a lot of investments, a lot of resources that need to go to Ukraine to support this reconstruction of the country. How is the country, the government, the people of Ukraine thinking about that? We don't know yet when the war is going to end, but it looks like we need to get prepared, because once that happens, it means that there will be a long journey to rebuild the country.
So that is maybe a long-term story, and actually we need to adapt. We need to be flexible. We do not need to put our life in a pause and just waiting when the war ends and everything will just be okay as before the war. We need to adapt, and we need to start our reconstruction processes right now. And actually, if we are talking about all of these processes, we need to understand that our main partners in reconstruction development are also the European Union countries and also the United States and any other countries like the Global South, as Brazil too, because we really rely on you just to establish the cooperation in the climate diplomacy issues. And hour ago, I had a great meeting with your prominent former Minister of the Environmental Protection, with Isabella Teixeira, and she said a very interesting phrase that there are some topics on which we can argue. There are some topics where we can disagree, but there is a topic where we must all agree in any case that there is a climate change, and climate change is something that we cannot combine with the peace and with the prosperity. And actually, how we see all of this reconstruction process, that is fully commit with the climate change policies and with the Green Deal, which we have today in the European Union, because as you may know, that we have about 30% of energy infrastructure objects damaged or partially damaged, and also our heavy industry. So that is lots amount of money, and we will need to attract hundreds of billions of dollars of private direct investments and other type of investments, maybe long-term loans and so on and so forth, just to rebuild our industry and our energy infrastructure with the principle build back better and greener. So that is our main commitment, just to take all of the climate issues and to have it in our reconstruction processes, and also like a weapon in this war too, because we know that a fossil fuel is a weapon of Russia today, and fossil fuel is an approach which Russia wanted to conquer Ukraine and Europe as well. So if we are talking about the reconstruction development, the most important and essential thing in energy infrastructure, without what we have now economy and industry and agricultural business, that is Green Deal and climate policies and climate diplomacy, as well with any other country in the world, which what we have something in common, that is climate change, climate mitigation issues, and so on and so forth.
Existem muitas coisas comuns entre o Brasil e a Ucrânia. São países agrícolas, são países que dependem de commodities, essencialmente, e por esse motivo eu perguntei à delegação como é que eles veem o tipo de suporte que eles podem obter do Brasil para a reconstrução da Ucrânia. Vamos ver qual foi a resposta.
if we are talking about the meetings in Brazil, what I can mention that everybody is very inspired, and they like reveal some new facts about Ukraine. That Ukraine is the biggest country in Europe. That Ukraine have a lot of in common with Brazil. That Ukraine secures food global security to 400 millions of people from the global south. So actually, we see that Brazil is like keeping to become also our partner, and they like open Ukraine from the other different dimensions. And for example, we can build and establish a good partnership in biofuel production, biogas, and like bioenergy as well. So that is like a new biomass economy. And as I said, Ukraine is one of the biggest agriculture country, and we have all the possibility to do this. And actually, I think that is very important, just to start this climate democracy and to strengthen each other on this ground. Because, as I said, we will definitely need this in our post-war reconstruction processes, and your business, your expertise, your technologies can really help us with this.
I mean, many Ukrainians needed to leave the country, because of the war, and they are spread out through Europe and through other parts of the world. And even before the war, of course, we had a lot of like communities of Ukrainians, around the world. In Brazil, we have a large, community as well. And how do you plan as a country, or maybe you can have an idea, to keep these people connected, because they will be very needed after the war, to help in the reconstruction of the company, the country.
Yeah, but today, all of Ukrainians, we are experiencing war. And war has a personal dimension for each and every of us. For example, part of my family, I'm originally from Crimea, and it's temporarily occupied now by Russia. And a part of my family living in Crimea, a part of my family is of enforced migration, a part in Ukraine and in Ukraine army also. But the past 2 years, 5 million people were forced to leave their homes and leave Ukraine due to the war. For us as a country, the return of these people is an absolute priority. The value of the person and the human value is the highest for us. And but people will return as mass to Ukraine when it will be safe, when the war ends, and of course the international law prevails in our region. But already today we are developing, for example, programs to support our diasporas, our people abroad, to preserve their identity through the cultural projects, through the educational project, and I hope that many of these people will return. And today also we are developing a few, as for me, very important directions in Ukraine. It's first of all, it's reintegrating of veterans into society, and it's a program for the mental health, because of course during the war a lot of people will have traumas.
Is there any kind of like communities of like Ukrainians outside that are somehow involved, like to get resource or try to create the right narrative about the war? I mean, is there any real examples that you can use of what's going on from the diaspora?
Diaspora, it's our very great ambassadors around the world. And in different countries, also in Brazil, because and Ukrainian community in Brazil based mainly on the south of the country and in the few states. And today, diaspora is one of our main voices around the world. When we talk about Ukraine, about our history, our identity, and we first of all talk from ourselves.
Before the war, Ukraine had a very good established agriculture business and evolving, become more professional. Engineering was a big part of that, manufacturing, big area of exports for Ukraine. and IT as well. IT, you had like 250,000 people working for IT. I remember many companies that I used to work with that had like developments of software and other things happening in Ukraine. You know, a lot of like capable people doing doing important things for big organizations around the world. So they were okay, you know, and of course a lot of the things were somehow damaged or interrupted. How do you see the future? Where do you believe there will be competitive advantage for Ukraine in the future?
A great question. Actually, I would like to say that nothing changed with our competitiveness advantages which we have before the war. Of course, agriculture sector was, is, and will be one of the biggest part of the Ukrainian economy. And of course, we need to do a lot of like mining policies today, because a third of Ukrainian land is like contaminating with the explosion objects. But of course, we still now also export grain. We still now secure the food global security. So that is like not a question if we will still have agri or not. Yes, of course we will. So that is like the biggest part of our economy. If we are talking about the big and heavy industry, it depends how many territories like we will be able to occupy, and of course we still like say that we have no other way. We need to occupy all the territories of Ukraine, also the Crimean Peninsula, because in such way we will have one of the biggest capacities in the world, actually, in wind production, and wind renewable energy production is one of the most valuable in the hydrogen production. And if we are talking about the green technologies, about the renewable energy, Ukraine have a big potential in the hydrogen production, and also the green ammonia, green fertilizers, so on and so forth. And of course, if we are talking about the IT, that is a great ground for our defense sector right now. So right now, Ukraine have all the abilities to become a leader of the unmanned technologies, avia technologies, which we use mostly in a war, in a defense system. But of course, we can transport it to any other sector, for example, agri sector as well. And like if we are talking about the Ukrainian space facilities, that is also our one of the main advantages. So just to summarize, agri sector nature-based, and we really rely on the Brazil showcase on this. Green transition economy, decarbonization issues, renewable energy in the energy mix, and bioenergy, biofuel is also very important, because if we are talking about the bioenergy, it had the biggest potential of creating the green jobs. Also other types of renewable energy, wind, offshore wind, and also transition to the hydrogen economy, IT sector, as you well mentioned, and of course the defense, security, and other air technologies. That is we are doing right now. So that is like not about the future, that is about right now, and about the our advantages between the European Union, just to become a reliable partner, because we are not only asking for the money, we are a reliable partner, and we are fully eligible to fulfill our international obligations.
Talent needed to change that. You know, when you think about green investments, manufacturing, IT capabilities that you need to build all the systems, all the things, you need a lot of ready people, prepared people to do this job. I mean, is there any plan or anything going on to make sure that these people are prepared? Because of course, part of the country is in the field, fighting for Ukraine, but there are a lot of people that are still in the cities. How is education at this moment? How are the things, the preparation people for the future happening at this moment? I know it's very difficult.
Yes, it's very difficult to combine like the defending of a country from the one side without what we will not have anything, and like long-term and potential educational programs. But of course, for now, we have some state-oriented programs in the defense IT sector, and it's going quite well. And of course, if we are talking about the educational programs right now, so we have from the agro-business who are like the most interested in new talents right now, and they are implementing some new like green technologies in agribusiness as well. And of course, much needs to be done because, as Ali mentioned, we had a lot of brain drain right now. And actually, why I'm talking about the potential of Ukraine in a green economy and green jobs and so on and so forth, I just want to show that people who now looking for a safe life in Europe or other countries, that is like very right decision. But of course, we are doing in Ukraine a lot just to return them back and to give them enough salary and to provide them security issues and to make them realize their self in their country in the best manner. So because when you're like abroad, you're international like human, but when you're in your own land, you're like the owner of it land, and you can realize yourself in many prosperities and dimensions.
So I will go to you now, Petro. An important question that is, how do you see Brazil? How do you see Brazil and the relationship with Brazil, Ukraine? I mean, how are you perceived, like the government, the private sector? Do you believe that Brazil has a role now and in the future for Ukraine?
I think Brazil do have a stake in this war. And, while we were here in Brazil, I learned a very interesting word that describes Brazil, joguinho, the principle. Then you overcome the hardships and you achieve a success against all odds, against every. So there is no hurdle or obstacle that Brazilian cannot overcome. And from this point of view, I will just give you three examples or 3 points how Brazil public and private sector should do or can do in this situation. And first of all, it's in the interests of the Brazilian government and Brazilian business and Brazilian society. So 3 dimensions. First of all, about Brazilian government. So the point number 1, as right now we know, according to Constitution of Brazil, the human rights are imperative for domestic and foreign policy. And it's very important right now to live up to this imperative. And I mean, what does it mean? I mean that the Brazilian government should think about human rights when it organizes G20 summit next year and BRICS summit in 2025. And the key issue is inviting Russia. The point is that if you invite Russia, and if Russian representative, whether it's a war criminal Putin, who is on a warrant of International Criminal Court, or another his representative, but it will hurt an international Brazilian standing, and it will show that if one leader of aggressor country can come without impunity, then this option is open for others, and maybe even some actors in Brazil itself will think that we can do the same thing. We can do some bad things for our country, violate democracy, violate human rights, and get with it without any punishment. So that would be bad for domestic and foreign policy of Brazil. Point number 2 about the Brazilian private sector. Yes, you said, and we know that Brazil is very strong as superpower, agricultural superpower. That's true. But also it's true that Brazil depends on Russian fertilizers. Like 30% of all fertilizers important to Brazil are Russian. And you should look at us and learn our lesson, Ukraine, that Russians are using their commodities, whether it's a natural gas or oil or grain or fertilizer in case of Brazil, to influence other governments and influence other countries. Look, they right now are destroying our agricultural sector in order to squeeze Ukrainian grain out of the markets of other countries. And they did it also before the war, using Ukrainian dependency on natural gas. And the risk is here is that they will use, for sure, they will use Brazilian dependence on Russian fertilizers to influence profitability and your market share. So in order to avoid this, I would tell that your private sector should think about making deals with Angola, with Nigeria, with Mozambique to bring natural gas to Brasilia and to produce ammonia fertilizers by themselves in order to become self-sufficient in fertilizers. And that will make you more profitable and more stable, more sustainable. And point number 3, the final point here about society. What we learned here is that we talked to William Wegg, a very prominent anchor in CNN Brazil, a really very, very smart person. And he said that social media right now in Brazil more influential and more important than the traditional media. But you should also know, and all Brazilian audience, that Russians are very, very smart in using disinformation in social media. And their goal is to make more quarrels, to make conflicts inside the society in order to weaken the society. Yes, in order to divide the society. So if they decide to interfere into Brazilian politics, they will use social media. This is a real threat because Brazil is a very important, influential country in the region. So if you make problems in Brazil, that will make problems for all the continent. In order to prevent this, your government and your private sector society should think about the responsible use of the social media. And I will also urge that final point, that a lot of Russians right now can come to Brazil. And as you know, there was a scandal when the Russian spy used a Brazilian passport for cover up. And since they understood that it's very easy to obtain a Brazilian passport from the black market, they will do it on numerous occasions. And that will mean that very bad people of criminal or military background, like former Wagner fighters, can come to Brazil and make very bad things. So in order to control this, you also need to control these things and to somehow to limit the access of Russian citizens to Brazil in order to prevent future troubles.
Eu reforcei com o Petro que, apesar de toda a contribuição que o Brasil poderia estar dando para reduzir a relevância da Rússia em relação ao conflito, o que mais o Brasil poderia estar fazendo em relação à economia da Ucrânia e à reconstrução da economia da Ucrânia durante a guerra e principalmente depois do pós-guerra? O Petro insistiu no seu ponto. Vamos ver.
Without punishing Russia for violations of human rights and war crimes, without diversifying the use of Russian fertilizers, yes, without limiting access of Russian citizens to Brazil, you will become more vulnerable and you won't be able to help Ukraine. So first of all, in order to help Ukraine, you need to help yourself to solve these issues which I just mentioned, your vulnerabilities in political, foreign policy, in economy, and in the social sector. If you become stronger, believe me that the whole world, that Brazil is a big country, as I said, the whole world will become stronger and you will have the time and efforts and resources to help Ukraine. The main issue is here is to limit Russia aggression. That would be the help of Ukraine, and that will be the great contribution of Brazil.
Before the war, Transparency International had a lot of reports on corruption, and corruption in Ukraine was one of the highest in Europe. And we saw some situations where the President Zelensky also needed to disconnect some people from the government, the current government, because of corruption as well during the war as well. I mean, how do you see that?
First of all, the war in any society, and I told you as a social scientist, the war in any society makes people to choose between their identities, whether they will behave up to their principles or they will just give up their principles. And one of the principles is integrity, whether you will remain honest, yes, and transparent in business, or you will try to use the opportunities of war to profit. So there are examples, unfortunately, there are examples in Ukraine when people started to profit from the war. Some of them are punished, some of them succeeded to get away. But just for you to know, as I'm telling you also as a scientist who study Ukrainian society, we conducted an opinion public poll. So the number of people who don't tolerate corruption is increasing, and a number of demand, the scale of demand toward the government to be more transparent is also increasing. And even despite the war, according to our opinion poll, which we conduct in August this year, 55%, despite martial law, think that it is possible to criticize president and to criticize government for the corruption, and that will not hurt the Ukraine's security amid the war. So Ukraine society remains very, very open. Ukraine society has become very conscious about the threat of corruption, and it puts corruption as the second threat after the war. And Ukrainian society became zero tolerant toward corruption in the government. So after the war, I can presume there will be no return to the old practices, that the people will vote very consciously and will not allow people who even suspected of corruption, they will not allow them to go to the government or to the parliament. These people will not be allowed to continue the policy. So that's how the war changed Ukrainian society. Ukrainian society became more demanding toward the government and with zero tolerance toward corruption.
I want to thank you all for coming here today. Again, I feel really sad about what's happening there, and I hope that this war ends soon and we get like Ukraine back to the war, in a different way.
Muito obrigado.
Bem, essa foi minha conversa com a Olga, o Alim e o Petro, a delegação de civis da Ucrânia, sobre como eles estão construindo relações que vão ser importantes para a Ucrânia, não só agora, durante a guerra, porque eles ainda precisam manter a economia rodando, mas principalmente depois, quando a guerra terminar. Se vocês pensarem que muitos países que passaram por guerras no final dessas guerras levaram anos, muitos anos, às vezes décadas, para conseguir chegar em estágios que pudessem ser possíveis eles reconstruir a sua sociedade. Só imagina que, por exemplo, depois da Segunda Grande Guerra Mundial, a Europa levou pelo menos 3 anos para se estabilizar, para poder começar a crescer novamente. Imagina então a Ucrânia. Existe uma urgência de não se perder o ritmo da economia nesse momento, obviamente, porque eles precisam de recursos não só para manter a guerra, mas manter a população, né, e criar condições mínimas dentro do país, mas principalmente depois da guerra, de acelerar um processo de reconstrução que vai precisar de muitos bilhões de dólares. Esse processo vai ser longo e o Brasil pode ter um papel muito importante nesse papel. Eles foram muito felizes em falar das similaridades que existem entre o Brasil e a Ucrânia, principalmente na área de agricultura. A gente tem que lembrar que a Ucrânia sempre teve um papel muito importante em levar alimentos para muitos países, principalmente no norte da África, na Europa e em outros lugares do mundo também, né? E o Brasil tem uma das mais avançadas tecnologias agrícolas do mundo, que hoje a gente não exporta essa tecnologia, a gente exporta os produtos dessa tecnologia. Existe um potencial muito grande do Brasil que tem um papel diferente na Ucrânia. Fora o interesse muito claro, em época de guerra, a Olga mostrando o quanto eles estão preocupados em reconstruir o país, se utilizando de princípios verdes, né, princípios de uma agricultura sustentável que vai de encontro a todas as metas que nós temos em relação à redução do aquecimento global. O Brasil poderia estar contribuindo muito nessa reconstrução, especificamente na área de agricultura, mas em outras áreas também, mineração, que o Brasil também tem tecnologias desenvolvidas aqui no Brasil, super interessantes, que poderiam estar ajudando o país a se reconstruir. O que é que vocês acham? Vocês acham que o Brasil deveria ter um papel mais ativo em relação à Ucrânia, ou como o Petro falou, em relação ao boicote à Rússia, para que eles parem a agressão que está acontecendo no país e evitem agressões futuras? Você acredita, como o Petro falou, que as relações do Brasil de compra de fertilizantes ou de produtos russos têm um impacto na questão da diplomacia brasileira e da independência brasileira ao redor do mundo? Você acredita que existem riscos para o Brasil, inclusive de segurança, como o Petro falou? Você acha que a gente deveria estar mais presente na reconstrução da Ucrânia, com todas as oportunidades que isso representa para tecnologias que nós já desenvolvemos aqui no país? Se sim, vai lá, comenta aqui embaixo, curta, e nos vemos novamente no próximo Conexão Global.